This video is going to be a bit of a difficult one to get through. And based on the nature of this conversation, I'm fairly certain there's going to be a few people in my comment section that are going to straight up tell me to kill myself. Welcome to the internet. If not for here, I might have faith in humanity still. I'm going to get fan art out of the way real quick so that we can get straight to the point. First we have a Goblin Suris by Cinder Quill, Gaelic Nox gives us a Dragon Suris, and Ghost Chan gives us Doggo Suris. Alright, all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. This will probably open up a broader discussion going forward, but for now we're going to focus on cruelty. First of all, what is cruelty? Well, cruelty is pleasure in inflicting suffering or inaction towards another suffering if a clear remedy is readily available. If there's no cost or risk to an action or inaction, and that action or inaction is negative in its nature, such as drowning someone as an action or refusing to help somebody who is drowning as an inaction, because a clear remedy is available, such as stopping someone from drowning, these actions would meet the definition of cruelty. Cruelty doesn't have to be violent, it doesn't even have to be physical. George Eliot stated that cruelty, like every other vice, requires no motive outside of itself. It only requires opportunity. Bertrand Russell once stated that the infliction of cruelty in good consciousness is a delight to moralists, and this is why they invented hell. Because hell would be a cruelty inflicted on someone, but for a good reason, at least within the narrative of the Christian Bible, considering that there are clear remedies available. In fact, any remedy that doesn't involve eternal conscious torture is a clear remedy, and thus the willful inaction of something like hell is cruel. I want to play a clip for you. This is an older clip from my channel, and you can't find it by searching because it's an unlisted video. There was a time where I used to live stream video games on my channel. I stopped this after a while because my subscriber gain on YouTube tanked. It hasn't truly recovered since then, but it's at least better than what it was at the time. If you want to catch live streams, Twitch is always available. I do that. Anyways, as most of you know, a while back I made a video entitled We Deserve to Live. This was to be an emotional gut punch for anybody who supported the NIFB to see that the people who they wanted dead were human beings just like them. I of course got some of the lovely internet troll comments on there, like this one here. Little did I know I would get somewhat entangled with this individual over the next few days. During the tail end of a live stream of Banjo-Kazooie, they decided to hop into my Discord and we had a little bit of a debate. My personal thesis was that being needlessly cruel the way that they were being has more negative side effects than positive ones, and thus engaging in cruel action is a largely useless endeavor. We got to a point in the conversation where I mentioned that being cruel to your peers is one more straw on the camel's back, and you never know exactly which line of yours could drive someone finally to commit suicide. You always have the option of being a supportive, caring person, and there is no benefit to choosing the cruel option, except for your own catharsis. And I think I've laid out a case in my Darth Bane video a while back that I really don't need to give a damn about someone's catharsis. It's a bit of a long clip, so strap in. What you have said in the conversation before is you would call somebody fatty or things like that because they are fat as a type of motivating factor for them to be not fat, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's not actually. In fact, we literally had a study cited during the course of this conversation that shows that negative type of motivation literally leads to a higher overall BMI from these people. Like science is not on your side.
It's either bust or don't.
No, it's not. No, it's not. You have espoused a method throughout this conversation that directly leads to the thing that you're trying to fight against. You have said in premise A.
It's either the chance that the nerd's gonna kill himself.
Okay.
That he's gonna forget about it. It's gonna.
Wait. Say that one more time.
If gets bullied, right? Say a small guy gets bullied. There's either the chance that he's gonna off himself or try to off him, or he's gonna get stronger. He's gonna change his weight.
Okay, so you would be willing to roll that die. You would be willing to roll that die.
Die roll. It's a dice roll. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so you would be willing to roll that die. Allow me a moment. Hold on. Allow me just a moment.
I know what argument.
I'm sure you do. So, rare, by any metric, is anything under 10%. So we will admit that...
Like eating disorder.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Cool, we're on the same page. I have in my hand a spin down. It's a 20-sided die. 1 and 20 would be 10% of this die. If this die manages to land on 1 or 20, This person has died. How many, did you go to school at any point?
Yes.
Okay, how many people were in that school? Would you say 300?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we got a 300 person school. And we've agreed that a rare instance, so it's rare this person might kill themselves as an example, can be anything 10% or less. So I'm going to roll this die 300 times. And every time I hit a 1 or 20, that's a dead classmate. And every time I roll it, 2, man, that person was really close to killing themselves. By your position, you're okay with any roll of this die. Any of them. So far, 3 classmates have survived. This is actually pretty good so far. 4 have lived. Oh! We have our first dead classmate. 5 in. So, 5 rolls in, and you've already killed, by your personal stance, you've killed 1 classmate. But we can go on. We have 300 bodies to pile up here.
Do it 300 times. I will wait here the entire time.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure you will laugh and gloat and glee every single time I hit one that says they're dead.
No, I will laugh when I see the amount survive.
Oh, I can go ahead and tell you, we got our 20. There's our second death. We were 8 rolls in. It only took 8 of these to kill 2 people.
Or it could all roll on 1 and 20, or it could all roll hot.
Okay, but your point is that you're okay with any amount of these deaths. Why?
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure there was something said in that conversation that many of you in the audience have heard at least once before. The justification of cruelty as a mechanism to achieve an end. For instance, you may be in a domestic abuse situation where you need to be the good and obedient spouse, and the beatings are there to keep you in line, so that you can be the good spouse. There truly is no justification for the beatings. In reality, the cruelty was only there as a vice, and it's being justified through what we would call an ad hoc rationalization. This is any rationalization that is created or used for a particular purpose only as necessary. These ad hoc explanations, like beating as a motivating factor for obedience, or as was shown in the clip, fat shaming in order to motivate someone to lose weight, are all ad hoc rationalizations or explanations. These happen when someone attempts to explain an event that has no true justification. It's been undermined already. But the ad hoc is expressly used in order to salvage some part of the conversation. It's fairly similar to moving the goalposts. The real reason you're fat-shaming somebody or beating someone is not because you think it will lead to them becoming a better individual. It's because you're a useless flaming dickbag. And you have to try justifying being a useless flaming dickbag through these types of ad hoc rationalizations. Hopefully this can show why ad hoc argumentation is fallacious. Wonderful, we can now throw cruelty in the area of fallacy. But it's more than that. One of the quotes that I mentioned earlier labeled cruelty as a vice. That's kind of important if you understand a little bit about virtue ethics. Virtue ethics create a structure that de-emphasizes rules and consequences and instead focuses on individual acts. The purpose of virtue ethics, as opposed to deciding whether or not a particular action is good, correct, or right, it instead tries to analyze whether or not the person themselves are expressing something in good character. To make a long story short, a virtue is something that is between two vices. Any clean middle ground you can find between the two. For instance, generosity is a virtue. Stinginess and prodigality. Courage would be the virtue between cowardice and rashness, and moderation would be a virtue between insensibility and self-indulgence. So personally, if we view cruelty as a vice, we have to determine what the other side of that vice is. I think self-sabotage would work here. And if we view cruelty and self-sabotage as vices, cruelty being working against someone else when there are obviously better alternatives, and self-sabotage being working against yourself, then something like compassion would be a virtue between the two. Helping others instead of being cruel, but not so much that you sabotage yourself. And if we use our earlier definition of cruelty, then in many cases, you would find that there's a compassionate approach that can solve several problems rather than a cruel approach. For instance, if you want to motivate someone to lose weight, something that I personally need to do, then there are compassionate ways of doing so that don't involve cruel measures like fat shaming. If you don't personally like the person that your spouse is being in the relationship, there are compassionate approaches that don't involve beating, like having a conversation and coming up with compromises. But what are some of the other justifications that we hear for cruelty? Well, let's go back to the conversation that I showed you guys earlier. One of the things that Master Thief said in the conversation was that it was a dice roll. They're either going to commit suicide or they're basically going to pull themselves up from their bootstraps and become stronger. Are there ways to make someone gain strength without actually being cruel to them? Well, yes. But I think there's a deeper problem that comes as a result of this type of thinking. We've heard the phrase that the world is a cruel place, and it really is. I mean, we literally live in a universe based on consumption. The world is not a nice place, nor is it a happy place in many ways. However, many individuals that view their cruelty as justified because it will supposedly help someone that they care about be able to face the cruel world ahead, well, I have a proposition for those people. What happens if the world isn't actually needlessly cruel on the whole? What happens when enough people have adopted this mindset that in their efforts to prepare somebody for a cruel world, they've actually become a cog in the machine of a cruel world that they themselves have helped construct? When we're looking at societal morals, we generally find that things like murder and thievery are wrong because enough of the society agree that they are wrong. This is also the way that many things that are not actually morals, like being of a particular religion, can be seen as right or wrong. Argumentum ad populum is a wonderful fallacy. But the point is, what if those same individuals all agree that the world is cruel, and thus inadvertently create that cruel world? The world itself could have been completely amoral, completely indifferent, but much like how our agreements about murder, thievery, and even religion have created a society in which we have those tenets in place, it doesn't seem that far-fetched, to me anyway, that we would also be constructing a cruel world in some desperate attempts to prepare people for a cruel world. We've inadvertently built the society that we've agreed is a bad thing and thus have prepared people to be able to deal with. Instead of spending time trying to deconstruct the society that we've made, that we've all agreed on is cruel, people instead try to band-aid the problem by simply preparing individuals for this cruel world. Now, that's not to say operate as if the world isn't cruel. We have already agreed that we exist in that society right now. Definitely grow thick enough skin so that you can exist in this world. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also be actively working to change the status quo. This is one of the reasons my channel exists. Hopefully, the methods that I employ on my channel are never cruel, even when I sometimes can be mean-spirited. The last thing in that clip that I wanted to touch on, though, was the consequences of cruelty. In the clip, we got to a point where I mentioned that cruelty can sometimes lead people to suicide or self-harm, an issue that I've unfortunately had to touch on my channel recently. Masta agreed that any number of bodies would be worth it if he could construct a few people who would be able to withstand the cruelty of the world, which is why I started rolling the die to say how many dead bodies of your classmates are you willing to stand on. Unfortunately, I think the point was lost on him since he said that he would laugh at the mountain of dead bodies, which I think echoes the issues of cruelty even more. I'll provide a link in the description to the entire video. It is unlisted, so this is the only way you'll be able to find it. It's also a 6-hour-long live stream, and this conversation happens near the tail end of that, so have fun. Anywho, I guess after all of this academic shit, we finally rest on what my opinions of cruelty are. And honestly, I just don't find cruelty as useful. Cruelty is not tough love. Cruelty is pleasure found in the suffering of someone else, especially when you yourself are enacting that cruelty. I don't find any action with that as a motivating factor to be particularly useful. And before somebody in the comment section says, Suris just doesn't like it because it's not useful, bite me. I'm a pragmatist. That's the lens I view things through. Anywho, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and standard video responses will return soon. This is just one of those ideas I've had floating in my head, and I want to have this video available for reference later. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed, please hit the like button, please share it with your friends, and as always, insert end of video tagline here.